The news that Michail Antonio has signed a new contract extension at West Ham took me by complete and utter surprise when it was revealed late yesterday afternoon, early evening maybe. It was something that had been sort of shrouded. There was no hint. It had been shrouded completely, absolute cloak and dagger. And something that the club had kept quiet for 3 weeks. 3 weeks ago, Michail Antonio signed this contract. I really like that. I think sometimes there's too much news that's leaked. I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand that there's some contradiction in that because clearly we've got a YouTube channel talking about West Ham news and stories and opinions, and it suits our purposes, the more stories that are out there. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But I do sort of like it when something slips under the radar like that. No hint, no talking about it at all. Nobody, not a single person said that this had been done 3 weeks ago and it just got revealed yesterday. Do you know why it got revealed yesterday? Because the club decided to leak the news out there. I guess maybe, just maybe, West Ham have been doing so well in the start to the season, they'd sort of held back that good news until maybe we'd had our first defeat, and then they go and reveal a little bit, drip feed us a little bit of good news. Depending on your point of view, of course, not everybody, as I know, is going to think that it's good news that Michail Antonio has signed a new deal. But I think number one for me, I do think, I'll get to the player himself in a second, I do think it's good news that he signed a new deal for two very different reasons. But I also think it's good news that West Ham have an ability to negotiate a contract with a player and keep it quiet and keep it under the radar without everything slipping into the public domain. That bodes really well for Jarrod Bowen, who, of course, is currently having, I think some would say, protracted contract negotiations with West Ham. Now, I think the thing with Michail Antonio is twofold. He's been rumoured to be unsettled for some time. Some would even say he wants out. Look, I'm not going to particularly mince my words here. He has a podcast with Callum Wilson. I certainly feel that it came across last season, starting from maybe January last season, the winter coming up, that he wanted to leave. There are rumours that he might be of interest to Wolverhampton Wanderers. Didn't really happen, did it? There was certainly what I would feel some maybe veiled criticism of David Moyes, particularly when he was talking about Gianluca Scamacca. He said, as a striker at West Ham, you've got to feed off scraps. However, if you regular watch the channel, you remember that I said at the time, I don't fully buy into how upset Antonio is with Moyes, because I said at the time that David Moyes has been the best manager of Michail Antonio's career. I do often say that there are some players who do not thrive under David Moyes. I mean, look, let's talk about Sebastian Haller, just didn't work. Felipe Anderson didn't work. Vlasic didn't work. There's more than that. You could even say that maybe David Moyes can't get the best outside Ben Rama, whatever. Pick your player. There are lots of them who you would say have not really thrived under David Moyes. Michail Antonio is not one of them. Michail Antonio has improved under David Moyes. David Moyes has turned Michail Antonio into a striker. Michail Antonio has become West Ham's leading Premier League goal scorer under David Moyes. I can't think of too many managers that would have turned him into that forward. The same with Marko Arnautovic, of course. There are some players that just thrive under David Moyes, and Michail Antonio is one of them. So I never fully bought into this whole thing that he was annoyed with David Moyes. They're perfect for one another, actually. So I think maybe, just maybe, there was less element of truth to the rumours that he wanted out than we were led to believe. But I do think he was possibly found it. He's used his own words in the podcast. I do think there was something in it that he might have wanted to leave. So I think him signing a new contract, I think that puts that to rest. We now know we're not dealing with a disgruntled player. We know we're dealing with a player that wants to be at West Ham. That's really good. From that, it's less disruptive. The other thing, from a player point of view, I think it's good that Michail Antonio has signed a contract extension. I really do. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going back on what I said a couple of days ago, which we need a new striker. I really do. I absolutely think we need a new striker. In many respects, I think we need to go and get a bigger and better striker. I don't mean bigger, you know what I mean. I think we need to go and get somebody with a higher profile to basically push Michail Antonio out the team. However, I still think that Michail Antonio is a really, really good option. Michail Antonio has been in beast mode for a couple of the games this season, maybe even 3 games this season. And I think that's a pretty good ratio for him. I think we've played 5 games, he's been in beast mode for 3 of them. That's pretty damn good. But Antonio needs to be in beast mode for him to be truly effective. And when he's not, it doesn't really work. And I think at that point, what we really need is another viable option. And that viable option needs to be another striker. It's certainly not. I think number one, it's not Danny Ings. I'd like to see Mubama come through, Mubama getting some more game time, but I think that's not going to happen, so I'm not going to waste time talking about it on this video. And I also think that whilst Jarrod Bowen may be David Moyes' second choice as a striker, I think against the very best teams, when you really are feeding off scraps, Jarrod Bowen doesn't have the physicality to play the lone striker role. Don't get me wrong, if when we play Sheffield United, if Antonio's not really doing it, and then on 60 minutes, David Moyes takes Antonio off, puts Jarrod Bowen up front, puts someone else wide, I think Bowen will cause their defences all sorts of problems. When we have more of a ball, I think that happens. However, when we're setting deep and everybody is our side of the halfway line, I don't think Bowen's particularly got the physicality to be that striker. I think if he gets a chance, he can put it away, as he showed in the Conference League final. But I just don't think he should be our other viable option as a striker. So I think we need to get one. But that doesn't mean that I'm disappointed Michail Antonio signed a new contract. No, not at all. So it's for what he had. His contract was due to expire at the end of this season. He's now signed another one, which takes him to the end of next season, which of course is 24-25. And there's an extension on top of that. It takes him to the age of 35, 36. And I think it'd be quite a remarkable bit of service from him, actually, for West Ham. Now, within that time, you're going to have your ups and your downs, and I think he's had ups and downs. But I think in terms of if he completes that and he does another, let's say this, even if he just does 2 more this season and next season, he's been a damn fine servant for West Ham, and I think it's a pretty good thing. The other aspect of this is it gives me real hope for how we might be negotiating Jarrod Bowen's contract. Because what this has shown is we can negotiate. Not only negotiate, we can negotiate and come to an agreement. Sign it, seal it, get it done, and not even mention it. It's not the first time we've done it, by the way. The other occasions, it escapes me. Maybe not quite as high profile. I think we might have done it with Fabianski before. I think we've done it a few times with 2 or 3 players. So we do have the capacity to sign a player up on a new contract and then bury the news. And that's what does give me a little bit of hope with Jarrod Bowen, because I sort of hope that maybe, just maybe, we've made a little bit of progress. Because there's some comparisons, right? We got this situation with Michail Antonio where we hear he's unhappy, where he's, not so much that he wasn't going to sign, but he was leaving, he was looking, whatever, be it go to Wolves, or he was linked with Chelsea at one point, if you remember. Everton wanted him. If you remember, I think it was January last season, Everton wanted him. Then you had the sort of Saudi speculation this season as well. He wasn't happy at West Ham. You hear all this stuff. And once again, whilst all this stuff is going on in the background or in the periphery, at that point, West Ham are signing, getting him. He's already signed his contract. So all this noise that was going on, if he signed his contract 3 weeks ago, and I understand that certainly is the case, 3 weeks ago takes us still into the transfer window. Well, there's a whole load of noise that he wanted off and he was going to leave. What's just more stuff that's just not true, isn't it? So, like we say, a little bit dubious with a lot of that news now. So maybe, just maybe, some of that Jarrod Bowen stuff isn't entirely accurate. Maybe he's more happy than we're led to believe. And as I mentioned a few days ago, certainly when he was sat next to David Moyes in the press conference, Jarrod Bowen said this manager here is underrated. He's done a great job winning the trophy, and maybe just sometimes take players at their words. Now, there's no evidence that Jarrod Bowen's about to sign a contract. All I'm saying is the Michail Antonio bit of business has given me hope. It's given me hope that maybe, just maybe, there's some talks going on. I'm pretty sure the talks are going on. What this has done is given me hope. Not only these talks are ongoing, but they'll be concluded to a satisfactory outcome if you're a West Ham fan, because that really would be excellent news. That's the sort. I'm not saying that Antonio signing a new deal is not good news, but he's coming towards the end of his career. Okay, it's nice. It's a nice thing. I'm pretty pleased about it. But let's be fair, Jarrod Bowen is in his mid-20s. He's coming into his peak years. His contract is running down. Liverpool are interested, blah, 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 all of those other things. So that'd be really mega news. If Jarrod Bowen commits to West Ham now, you've got to think that's the contract that takes him through his mid-20s and well into his 30s. You'd imagine it would be a 5-6 year deal, right, on big money, and he's an excellent player. I just think it'd be really, really good news, and we could actually really get our teeth into just building again. It takes all that whole Declan Rice stuff that we've just dealt with. It takes all of that away, doesn't it? The whole thing of the contract being run down and whatnot. I guess we're never going to be rid of the Lucas Paquetá rumours for all the reasons that we saw yesterday. I didn't make that stuff up about Newcastle. That was in the news. That was in the websites. Go and find it. Go and find it yourself. Newcastle United are apparently interested in Lucas Paquetá. He's that good. We're going to have interest in him. But what the nice thing is, you get these players now. Someone wants him, they're going to have to pay a lot of money for him. If we can tie Jarrod Bowen down, and as far as I can see, we really do have our best players, the ones that we definitely want to keep tied down on pretty good deals. So we're close. Gives me hope with Jarrod Bowen. But yeah, the good news and the one thing we do know is Michail Antonio has signed a 1-year contract extension at West Ham with another year option on the back of that.